Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, the USC Trojans, taking the podium for Big Ten Media Days. And, I thought some really interesting talking points that Lincoln Riley gave us, not only about this USC football team heading into 2025, but really the direction of this USC program over the next couple of years. And I'll say this, and I'm kind of interested to hear from the USC fans in the comment section. The more I dive into this USC program, the more I talk about this USC program, it almost feels like it's year one for Lincoln Riley. It almost feels like a fresh slate. Now, that is not me getting up here and saying that we forgot about the last couple of years, because there ain't no question about it, right? The last couple of years were not the standard for USC on the football field, but it finally feels like Lincoln Riley has figured it out at USC. It's something that we've talked a lot about in the summer months. USC is finally back to operating like a national championship caliber program, which you just couldn't say over the last couple of years. And I think the impact that Caleb Williams had year one for Lincoln Riley, I think it kind of covered up a lot of things that weren't going right within this program that started showing face over the last 2 years. I think Lincoln Riley has figured it out from a couple of different ways. Number one, NIL rev share, Chad Bowden coming in, like the roster building conversation that Lincoln Riley had. I didn't have roster building on my bingo card. That's what Lincoln Riley talked about in a little bit of that press conference that we'll dive into. The general feel was we kind of figured it out and kind of are starting fresh, but starting fresh from a point where, hey, we're operating as a program the right way. We got the right front office people in place. Just as importantly, and I don't think nearly enough people talk about this, we got the coaching staff in place. This might be one of the most impressive coaching staffs that you see in the entire country. Right? Lincoln Riley, one of the best offensive minds, not only at college ranks, but in the sport. Then you look on the defensive side of the football and say, we got Super Bowl champs. We got former NFL defensive coordinators. I think we got a defensive coordinator in Dan Lynn, who's one of the best in the sport as well, not only in terms of the front office guys like Chad Bowden, but I feel like we finally got a coaching staff that is elite for USC over the next couple of years. That was the general vibe that I got from Lincoln Riley during this Big Ten Media Day press conference. Want to get into some other sneaky storylines that I might be reading into a little bit more than I should, but hey, we're going to talk about it. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the USC fans, as we roll into Big Ten Media Days, as we roll into fall camp, we dang close. And as much as I love talking about this program on the recruiting trail, as much fun as I've had talking this program on the recruiting trail, ain't nothing better than talking this football team in the fall. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it now. to the USC fans who've been rocking with the boys for a while, y'all know I wasn't just going to let this go. We got to talk a little bit about the roster building philosophy that Lincoln Riley shared with us. And he said, hey, when I first got to USC, I think the words he used was, we got to shock the system. This program is nowhere close to where it needs to be, especially from a roster standpoint. So we want to bring in pretty much a, kind of clean slate, bring in a ton of new football players, try to create some momentum and buzz around this program. Look, it worked. It worked the first year. I think it worked, especially because you had the best quarterback in the sport. Now, the problem was, and Lincoln Riley was very transparent, said, I probably made a mistake here. We decided to do it again going into year two. Decided to really lean into the transfer portal, kind of ignore what was going on at the high school ranks. That was a mistake. Missed on some portal additions over the last 2 years, let the high school recruiting falter a little bit. He was pretty clear. Look, well, why did Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma and come to USC? Because USC has the ability to be one of, if not the best programs on the talent acquisition side of things. And I think Lincoln Riley, Chad Bowden, I think they would tell you, look, what we're doing in this 2026 high school recruiting class, that's not an enigma. That's not going to be a rarity over the next 5 years. That's going to be the standard. Like, that's going to be the expectation. Y'all know how I feel about it. You can use the transfer portal to fill in some gaps. The transfer portal is actually a very effective tool to use to make sure you're a complete football team. But look, if you're relying on finding your difference makers at the transfer portal, you ain't going to find them. If you want access to that top talent, those difference makers that allow you to compete at the highest level of the sport, you ain't going to find them in the portal. You got to find them at the high school ranks. And that's exactly what USC has done over the last couple of months at the high school ranks. Talk about guys like Mark Bowman and Luke Wayful, Kenny Pepe. Those are the guys that if we are talking about USC holding up a national championship trophy over the next couple of years, it's going to be because of those guys. You'll have transfer portal additions come in and play roles and be good football players. But if you are relying on the transfer portal to grab your difference makers, you ain't going to be happy with the product that you see on the football field. And Lincoln Riley was very open saying, hey, we kind of lost our path. We probably shouldn't have leaned into the portal as much as we did, and we feel like we fixed it. Y'all know I love talking roster build, and that kind of fired me up a little bit if I'm a USC fan. Number two, want to talk about his points on the defensive line. And it's two different things, right? We've talked about two things when it comes to the USC defensive line, the size and the depth. It's just night and day different. We barely had a single body last year that was over 300 pounds. And we had about four guys that we relied on that we thought could be good football players for USC up front, especially on the inside. It's a problem, especially in this conference. Would have been a problem in the Pac-12 too, but especially a problem in the Big Ten. Now, here's the thing that I probably haven't talked enough about that I feel really dang strongly about. That is, it's not just bigger and better, but it's deeper. Now, why does that matter? If you want to win football games, not only late in the season, but late in games, got to be deep. I mean, think about all the one-loss games that USC suffered in 2024. Think about all the fourth quarter leads that USC didn't come away on top with. Well, why was that? I think it was, hey, we just didn't make some plays down the stretch. But I think just as importantly, when you are relying on your defensive line to play 60 snaps a game like Devin Tompkins had to in some games, going to be a problem in the fourth quarter. Now, if you lessen that, hey, Devin Tompkins, you're playing 30. Josh Jarrett, you're playing 30. Keyshawn Silver, you're playing 30. G-Day's playing 30. If you keep these guys fresh, better for fourth quarters, guess what? That fourth quarter going to look a little bit different. Like your defensive line's a little bit more fresh, and you're playing your best football in the fourth quarter as opposed to playing your worst football in the fourth quarter like we saw USC do a lot in 2024. It's the size we love, but more importantly, it's the depth. Cleaning up those one-score losses that we saw in the fourth quarter, this is where it starts. It starts on the defensive line, starts with playing your best football all four quarters, but especially in the fourth. I think depth on the defensive line helps you do it. Number three, Jayden taking a step. I thought Lincoln Riley was pretty transparent in terms of, hey, what do we want to see from Jayden going into 2025? I didn't come out and outrightly say Jayden's quarterback one. I would be stunned if Jayden does not start the year as the quarterback one. What do we want to see Jayden grow from? And this is Lincoln Riley words, not mine. Hey, the mistakes that you make can't kill us as a football team. And I think that's kind of sums up how we've talked about Jayden throughout the offseason, where what do we love about Jayden? Let's start with that. Half glass full kind of guy. Positive vibes Jay. What we love about Jayden is that he's a potential difference maker at the quarterback position in a way that Miller Moss just wasn't. When things broke down for Miller Moss, he just didn't have the juice to do much about it, right? Getting outside the pocket, throwing off platform, that just was not Miller Moss's game. Now, if you insert Miller Moss into a team that's perfectly run and you're just asking him to dice people up from the pocket, Miller Moss can be a dang good quarterback. Unfortunately, that's not how it works in college football. Things break down. We need quarterbacks to get outside the pocket, be difference makers. That's what Jayden gives us, right? He's a big body that's hard to tackle in the pocket. He's not a unreal athlete, but he's a much better athlete than Miller Moss when it comes to extending plays. We want that to continue to be part of Jayden's game. We want to continue to see him rip it up the boundary. And we want to see him push the ball down the field, make the high-level throws. Look, we know Jayden has very good arm talent. Go back to his UNLV film. There's a lot of throws that'll make your jaw drop. We want the difference maker, Jayden, but at the same time, we got to walk that line better. too many mistakes in 2024. And the mistakes weren't just throwing the football away. The mistakes just weren't missing a pass. The mistakes weren't missing a read. The mistakes were bad sacks, turnovers when you can't have them. Things that a lot of times could cost football teams games. Lincoln Riley stressed, hey, we can't have that if we want to go where we want to go. Can Jayden continue to be the difference maker, but know how to walk that line? Something that Caleb Williams did with his first season at USC in an exceptional way. Caleb Williams had that ability to, hey, I'm going to be a difference maker. I'm going to make throws that are going to put your jaw on the floor, but I also ain't going to put the football in harm's way all that often. It's a hard line to walk. Can Jayden walk that line better in 2025? Last storyline that I think we probably have to talk about is DJ Wingfield. That's the story to follow in fall camp. Still has not gotten his eligibility waiver from the NCAA. Y'all know how I feel about that. The NCAA just complete joke. Like, how is this not figured out a week from fall camp? It's not fair to DJ Wingfield. It's not fair to USC. Okay. We don't know. You got to have young guys step up. To be honest, regardless if DJ Wingfield's playing or not, we need these guys in the 2 deep to show us they can play football in 2025. My biggest question mark for USC is not how good the defense is going to be. It's not about Jayden. Like, I kind of have some blind trust that Lincoln Riley, with a full year of working with Jayden, he's going to be fine. Is this offensive line? I like the first 5. I like the 6 with Justin T. What's 7, 8, 9? If this USC team does suffer some injuries up front and they need to shuffle the deck and access their depth, do we have guys that we trust to come in and play quality football? That's a question that I think a lot of USC fans have. The biggest storyline in fall camp, regardless if DJ Wingfield's on the field or not, is are we deep enough to play a high-level football in the Big Ten over the next couple of years next couple of months on the offensive line? We'll see what happens with DJ Wingfield. It's not me getting up here and saying that DJ Wingfield is a first-team all-conference guy. He's just not. There's not a sample size that shows us he is. But I do know he's a really solid football player, and I know he gives you some position versatility, and I know USC has some question marks about depth. DJ Wingfield's important, but if he can't play, it's not like you can't replace him, but we need some young cats to step up. And that's going to be a storyline we talk a lot about over the next couple of weeks in fall camp. We'll close it out there. Some interesting storylines, some storylines that I like talking about. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.